Good morning, everyone. This is Beth Guide with Talking Purple, and today is the start of early voting here in Texas. So we thought no better time than to take a few minutes and go over the amendments so we can help people understand what they're about and they can make good decisions. I also want to talk about the CD18 race as well as the Houston City Council race. There's some interesting things in all of them. So I thought it would be a good time to go over that with everybody. As always, we want to make sure that we get outside the echo chamber and give you guys both sides as best as we possibly can so that you can make your own decision and it's not just about what you see on social media. So with that, let's start with I think I want to start with the congressional race first here in Texas. I was going to do amendments, but that can get boring pretty quickly. So I think the more important thing to do is to talk about CD18 first. So those of you that have been around Houston for a while, and actually maybe even the country, know Sheila Jackson Lee, and she passed away a while ago, and her seat was filled by Sylvester Turner. Now, what I want to say before I talk about the candidates that are running, Sheila Jackson Lee and Sylvester Turner are extremely different. They're both Democrats. They both ran as Democrats. I worked with Sylvester Turner to help bring about some change for Kingwood, and he was outstanding. He gets a bad rap, in my opinion. He was always very fiscally responsible, always wanted to make good, solid decisions. And I almost want to say he was more conservative than what he got credit for. Sheila Jackson Lee, I not really going to go into a lot on her at this point because it's hindsight is 2020. But what I will say is that the same congressional district elected both of these people. Um, the city of Houston actually elected Sylvester Turner mayor. They didn't elect Sheila Jackson Lee mayor. So there was enough of an opposition there. So the reason I'm saying that is because there's several candidates in this race coming up. Amanda Edwards, former Houston City Councilwoman, she seems like one of the people that are going to be in the runoff. And the Republican that's running, her name is Carmen Montiel, and I know Carmen, and she's a very nice lady. She's an immigrant. She used to be an anchor down in Venezuela, where she is originally from, and she knows her issues. But there's another candidate in this race that I want to point out because if you were in the Sylvester Turner camp and you understand what that is, I think that George Foreman is the best choice. Now, I've met George Foreman. He is exceptional. He is a role model, and he is somebody that I think that as a congressperson, you guys can look up to. Um, and I think he gives a unique perspective. I think his dad, being George Foreman, he raised a very fine person. So, although I'm not encouraging an endorsement of anybody, what I'm going to say is that if you're looking to stay within the Democrat Republican system, that's Amanda Edwards and Carmen Montiel. But if you want somebody that's closer to Sylvester Turner and the way he did things, then I think you're better to go down the middle of the road and pick the independent in the form of George Foreman. So that would be my thought on that race. Now, the other interesting thing that happened, which I'm kind of, I don't even, it just came out of left field. Apparently, there's an at-large seat open for the city of Houston. And there's a few people running for that. Actually, there's a lot of people running for that, but I want to cut through the noise on that because there's a couple people to look at and one not to look at, and I'll kind of back up why. So let me start with who not to vote for, especially if you're in the Kingwood area. There's a lady, her name is Martina Lamont Dixon, and she is a perennial, I'm going to keep running for office. She sat on the on the Humble ISD school board for a while, and she presented herself in one manner. And as we all got to watch her conduct herself on Humble ISD, I don't know that I feel, in my opinion, that she adequately represented the way she ran for office. My bigger problem with her is that, as everybody knows, there's a lot of trouble in the Humble ISD school district. Bad superintendent, a lot of maybe misappropriated money that nobody seems to know. There's just a real mess. And there was two distinct factions of people. And this is not a political issue. There was the people that wanted to leave the status quo and leave the superintendent in place and fought very hard to do that. And Miss Dixon was one of them. And she really, the superintendent in that district, I think as time goes on, we're going to show that there was a lot of issues. And for her to have publicly supported her, fought her termination. And I think as these audits of our school bonds go forward, I don't know how this is all going to turn out. But complacency, even if you don't participate in something, complacency is not, to my mind, is not the way to go about doing things. So I wouldn't want to see that on the Houston City Council. So although I have signs all over Kingwood and she's going to fight for Kingwood, and look, Fred and Twyla are doing a great job. Julian Ramirez is backing us up as well. We're in a good spot. I think we need to pick a better person rather than just where somebody geographically is. And when we have the record of behavior that we had at Houston at the Humble ISD school board, I just can't see that. So that's again, this is my opinion, but there, if you don't know about it, look about it and go watch where the votes came down. But I cannot advocate for that particular candidate. So the next part of this comes down, and again, our podcast is Talking Purple, and we want to make sure we give everybody accurate representation. So the lady that is running on the Republican side, her name is Sonia Rivera, and everybody's endorsed her. She seems to be a solid conservative. She's Hispanic. And she seems to want to say she's going to support Kingwood, which always is my first and foremost, because, Houston took over Kingwood. So therefore, we now have a dog in this hunt, just in case you don't know. But what I found to be interesting, and as I see the backlash on this, I'm kind of wondering about this one. Dwight Boykin is also running. He's been around Houston politics for a long time. He's got a lot of friends. And what I found to be interesting is I saw a political ad. I guess I'd say it was a meme, but it really was a political ad go by. And it was from previous, many of which were Republican city council people supporting Mr. Boykin. I've met Mr. Boykin. He's a very nice man. I don't know that I don't know where he comes down on things. I haven't interviewed him to that degree that I would know that. I welcome him or Mr. Rivera to come on and have a conversation with us and talk to us, and maybe we can talk between both of them, because I think it's odd that the Republican Party issued a endorsement for one person, and yet I have half the previous Houston City Council and even a current council person backing Mr. Boykin, who's running as a Democrat. I want the best person for the job. So that's why I say I don't want Martina Dixon. So I will say from my standpoint, that would be a non-starter. Um, but I think the other two need to be looked at. And again, like I said, Miss Rivera is telling everybody that she is, and I say telling, I had a conversation with her, that she is a hard conservative and that's the road she wants to go down. And Mr. Boykin seems like he is right in the middle of everything, and seems to have a lot of bipartisan support. So I guess it kind of depends on which way you want to go. Some people are saying, well, we have to support the Republican because we have to support the Republican. Um, and then like we have the middle of the road. So what I will say on this is I think, and I think this is probably at some point worth a whole podcast on itself. But when I look at both political parties in this country, and I think this is where um, this podcast is kind of born out of as well. There's two political parties, but within inside those two political parties, there's two factions, and I think in both of them there's two factions. Okay, so we do a lot of talking about the far right and the radical left, and we use these words a lot. And again, I think social media is one of the biggest problems we have because it is siloed the groups of people together. So the only thing you hear is what you all are saying about yourselves. You don't ever get something that you can make a decision with. And critical thinking is really important. I mean, I can't stress that enough. Um, so we have these two extreme edges. But then within inside the party itself, both of them, I think we have the Kennedy faction, and I mean John Kennedy, JFK, not Ted Kennedy, not RFK. I mean JFK. I contend that if JFK was around today, he'd probably be a Republican because he's fiscally conservative. There was some principles about him. I see it go by that some people will say it's not your grandparents' Democrat Party anymore, and I agree with that assessment because I mean I know when I was younger where I came down on things, and I feel like I've stood exactly where I am. Okay, so there's the far left, and then there's the middle of the left, and I'm going to call them Kennedy Democrats. And then when I look at the right, there's the far right. And you know, populism seems to go along with that far right. Reagan was somewhat in the middle between the far right and what I'm going to call the Bush Republicans. And there's a lot of Bush Republicans. And what I think they are the classical Republicans, Republicans that the country club, the Rockefellers, the Bushes, where the concept that the Republican Party was only for rich people. I don't think the Republican Party is only for rich people anymore. I don't look at it that way because populism seems to have manifested itself on the right. So, although Bernie Sanders and AOC are seeming to bring a populist slant to the left and seem to be gaining traction with that. So, I think that when I look at these parties, so the reason I say this as I'm talking about a Houston City Council race and why I'm giving a philosophical analysis of left and right and the way my worldview on it is that the Republicans that endorsed Mr. Boykin seem to be of that um, center right group, that Bush Republican group. Um, there seems to be a commonality between all of them, and they live in the middle. I mean, and really the Kennedy Democrats live in the middle, the Bush Republicans live in the middle, and then, you can kind of go out from there. I think Reagan moves more to the right, and then we have populism on the far. I'm not gonna necessarily assign that to Trump because I think Trump is closer to Reagan. If I think historically when it gets looked at, he'll be closer to Reagan and not all the way out to this far right extremism. But I do think that populism's running around in all of this, which is kind of bringing it a little bit more to the right. So when we look at all of it, I say all of this because just like Mr. Foreman, um, I, he's a little bit more in the middle. Boykin's a little bit more in the middle. If you want somebody a little bit more in the middle, those are probably your picks. If you want more to the right, you want more conservative values, then that's Sonia, um, and that would be Carmen. So we've kind of laid it out to kind of give you a feel. So you yourself have to decide where you're at as to who to cast that vote for. Okay, so that would be my opinion on the two races of importance. Now, I want to go through these constitutional amendments because there's always a lot of gobbledygook. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in a little bit of a voter's guide underneath this podcast so that you guys have that. So I'm not going to get involved with reading these. I'm just going to kind of give you what they're talking about. Okay. So Proposition 1, it's called SJR 59. It wants to make a constitutional amendment that creates a permanent technical infrastructure for the state of Texas. It's going to be self-funded, and it will be to provide capital money for education programs in Texas. The recommendation is to oppose this one because it has no legislative controls. Means nobody is overlooking those expenditures, and you're writing this into the Constitution, which means this is not something that can ebb and flow with the way the legislature changes every 2 years. This would be a permanent thing, and nobody would be able to is overseeing it legislatively. So there's not a vote to support that. So I think that is a big deal. I think it's without legislative controls, it's very hard to create something that's an ongoing expense without having somebody elected that represents me oversee that. So that's the first one. The next one, the second I say this, I think everybody should be for it. It prohibits imposing tax on capital gains, either real capital gains, and they want this written into the Constitution, or unrealized gains. And those unrealized gains always really bother me because, if you ever had a stock account, your stock account goes up, your stock account goes down. If you lose money, they don't give you a refund. So this unrealized gains, it's like it's nebulous, it's changing, it's too much shifting sand. So realized is real. You actually have to take it out of the bank, but unrealized, I always have big problems with because a stock market crash or something like that, they're not giving you a refund on it. So I don't agree with paying tax on a hypothetical. My executive producer says we don't like hypotheticals. Well, unrealized tax is a hypothetical. And it would be on individuals, families, estates, or trusts. So we would support prohibiting an imposition of capital gains tax in the state of Texas. So that would be something we would support. And that is Proposition 2, SJR 18, just so if you're following along. The next one, we have a problem in the state of Texas. And that is we have a lot of judges that seem to not have, I don't know what's the right word for it. I want to say prudence, but they're not issuing bail based on the bail and bail requirements based on the crime. a bail requirement on a low end misdemeanor is getting the same bail as if I killed 10 people. And there needs to be some deference as to the degree of something before you just agree to let somebody out, because these people are going out and there's a Crime Busters thing here in Houston that tells all these people that go out, they're released on these bonds, and then they go back and they've killed somebody. And the thing is that when you kill somebody, you can't undo that. There is no reset button like there is in a video game. And I think that's the problem. We're playing with people's lives. So although, we want to be equitable, the other side of that becomes we also don't want to be letting people out so that they kill children or they cause other death, because death is something you can't undo. And I think that's the way we should be approaching it, instead of it being a political stake in the ground. Well, I'm not going to do this because. So, what they want to do is they want to have a constitutional amendment requiring the denial of bail under certain circumstances to people that are accused of violent crimes. And that's a way to kind of rein in some of this judicial prudence. Now, I support doing this. I think it's a no-brainer, and we should not have to do this, in the sense that we should have judges that take society into consideration. If you don't want to take the victim into consideration, but take society, and what is the impact of letting that person out, and what thing can happen that is not irrevocable over this. So we support having a constitutional amendment that requires an denial of bail. So that's Proposition 3. And again, the aim is to try to address the safety concerns and the release of these violent offenders that just keeps happening. If nothing else, here in Houston, I mean, we see it every day, and people are pretty upset about it. So this kind of addresses that and puts some bumpers in, not all, but put some bumpers in inside the Constitution of Texas. So this would be an amendment. So again, it's not subject to, once it becomes an amendment and we vote on it, it's not subject to political pressure anymore. And I think that's the important thing. Okay, so the next one is Proposition 4, and this is dedicated to revenue from state sales tax to be used for the Texas Water Fund and provide allocation and resources. Now, you've been hearing me talk about flood, and I'm going to talk about flood. I think it's a big deal. Flooding is a big deal, but I'm going to oppose this one. Because it allocates $1 billion a year for sales tax revenue, whether it's needed or not. Water infrastructure is important, but it shouldn't be part of the Constitution. And it's unfortunate that the Constitution is being utilized in this way, that we can't make common sense decisions on things that don't require us to have a constitutional amendment to say, yes, we'll pay for flooding. I just think it's a little over the top to do that. We should be able to achieve that without much pushback. Now, you see the people that are running for Congress that are in the state legislature that voted against it because they didn't read it, and some political think tank told them what they should vote for. So there is some thought that maybe we've got to do this, but because again, we don't do a good job on electing people on the front side, and then we're trying to legislate what they do on the back side. Pick good candidates on the front side, and then you don't have to do things like this. We need common sense people that make good decisions for the good of everybody, and not just in a partisan manner. Or, I love how everybody becomes conservative at election time, but they're not so conservative after election time. It's just, to me, pick the right person for the job, and like we'll end up all being a lot better off. Okay. So position 5 is a constitutional amendment authorizing the legislature to exempt taxation on personal property for animal feed. Um, we support this generally. We shouldn't write tax kind of stuff in there, but this is sort of that grants of exemptions. You don't want exemptions in the Constitution of Texas, not the United States, of Texas. But this one's kind of small and it helps our farmers and it's okay to do it. So this one we're going to go ahead and support. Proposition 6, constitutional amendment prohibiting the legislature from putting occupation tax on certain entities. Um, we support this one. It binds future legislations from putting tax on stock trades and security transactions or creating an occupational tax, income tax, occupational tax on financial market operators. We don't want anything that looks, because once you crack the door on state income tax or any type of occupational tax, so just, I say no new taxes, stop them. So that's Proposition 6. And that's HJR 4. Proposition 7 is a constitutional amendment authorizing the legislature to provide an exemption of taxation for the market value of the resident's homestead of the surviving spouse of a veteran. And again, we're talking about exempting somebody from tax, and typically that's not what we want to do. But in this case, it's for veterans and it's a very small amount of money. Cost to the state is not that much, and it's just the right thing to do to support surviving spouses of veterans. And so I mean, there's a little bit more to it than that, but just that's a support one. Proposition 8, constitutional amendment prohibiting the legislature from imposing death taxes applicable to decedent's property or to transfer the estate. This stops and forces the legislature not to impose an estate or inheritance tax. We don't want states and inheritance tax. I mean, our parents and people passed down, that money was taxed, they worked hard for it. If they're passing it down, let it just pass. And we don't want the state of Texas having any legacy kind of taxes or anything like that. Again, any of these national ideas for taxation, we don't do that here in Texas, and Texas continues to have a thriving, booming economy. So we don't need to do it. So let's not, and kind of keep going with the standard of life that in some ways, we've been impervious to the recessions that have happened within the big government. Our state has stayed really in good tact, even despite its dependency within the oil industry. That usually what happens is, I think there was oil in the past, there was oil downturns and it impacted the entire economy. We've done a really good job of diversifying now, and I think we've kind of stayed out of these really bad recessional situations that we've had. Okay, so on to the next one. Constitutional amendment authorizing, let's see, market value of the tangible property of a person who owns or held or used to the production of income. This amendment authorizes businesses to exempt up to $250,000 of the market value of income generating property like tools and equipment. And right now it's $2,500, which is kind of very passe. I think this is a good thing for us. I'm a small business owner, so anything that increases a deduction for us, I'm for. I think small business owners work many long, hard hours, and I think it's okay to kind of give a business exemption for something like this, so that we go ahead and support that one. Next one is amendment to authorize the legislature to provide another temporary exemption to the improvements of a residence that was destroyed by fire. Okay. What they want to do, and we kind of did this with the flooded houses too. is we had to, and you know, it's funny, the sun's coming up behind me, so you'll have to just put up with my face and the extra lighting. I'm here in my Galleria office today, and as a result, I'm a corner office with a lot of windows. So sun's coming up and coming up over the horizon here with all of this. But anyway, so I apologize for the lighting changes. I hadn't planned on getting that one fixed. I'll have to figure out what to do with that moving forward. Okay, anyway, back to homestead exemptions for fire damaged people. We saw this happen in Harvey, that they didn't raise appraisal rates for 2 years after Harvey on these houses that were really badly damaged. I think we should support a temporary homestead exemption for houses that were destroyed. It's the right thing to do. Your value is not there in your property at the time, and you can't make an adequate assessment. So again, we're saying we're codifying something that's just the right thing to do. And that's what kind of bothers me about things in this world is, why do we have to codify things that are just common sense, the right things to do? Okay, next, constitutional amendment authorizing legislature to increase the amount of exemptions for school districts for the market value of house and residence for persons that are elderly or disabled. So this can kind of go either way. You can oppose it, and I'll give you the argument to oppose it. Also, you can support it, and I'll give you the reason to support it. So if you want to oppose it, a carve out for the elderly and the disabled would have a pretty big impact on the Texas budget, because it's a lot of older people that own their houses. So it's one of those that if you do it, no, you got a big loss of money. Now, is money everything? I don't know. Have these people been around? Do they have people in the school district? No. So, school taxes and mud taxes are the highest taxes on your tax bill. I don't know if everybody realizes that or not. It might not be a bad thing to eliminate property tax for people that don't actually utilize the systems that they're supporting. Okay. It's one of those things I've kind of long argued a little bit about, which is, if you don't have a kid in the school district, you're still paying a lot, and it really is bigger than your city property tax at this rate. I don't know if anybody's looked at their Humble ISD with all their super spending. See my discussion on Martina Dixon. But if you're not happy with the amount you're paying in school tax every year, and you're starting to approach elderly or disabled benchmark rather, this might be something will do. So I think to try to start to limit it, enforce it, I personally am going to support this. I'm appreciative of it. So and read this one over carefully before you decide, because it will cost a lot of money in the long run. But and then I say, I could probably go off on school districts too, because at the end of the day, we charge a lot of money. And it's very top heavy in administration and not so much going to the students or the teachers. I have to buy school supplies for teachers to help support their classrooms, and yet people are living in multi-million-dollar houses with 7-digit salaries. There's something wrong with that, at least in my estimation. So we'll just kind of throw that one out there. Okay. Next one, constitutional amendment to increase the amount of exemption on a residence from 100,000 to 140,000. I'm going to say this. This is the most important one on your docket, this, to my mind. This stops anybody from going back and lowering the amount of your exemption. Okay. So I think you want to do this. I think that it's reasonable to start taking this money off. I actually, think it needs to be more. And they voted on it, and because of people like Mr. Toth, he voted against it, said it wasn't big enough, so you get nothing for 2 more. We're not going to give anybody crumbs for 2 more years. It's it's bad decision making yet again. Okay. So at least if I write in that it can't be, it can't go under 140,000, somebody can't make a bad decision and take away something that impacts my family. So yes, we need to support Proposition 13, 100%. This is, again, I don't think it's a bipartisan, I think it's a bipartisan issue. I think everybody should want to make sure that their house and their property tax stays consistent. Okay, so this next one establishes a dementia prevention institute in Texas. Again, carving money out for the treatment prevention of Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease related disorders, and transferring about $3 billion from the state fund to the state general registry. General revenue fund. Dementia hit my family hard. I lost my father in the beginning of the year because of it. We have some really awesome places here in Texas that we are at the head of cancer and dementia and a lot of things. Texas, we've got our Texas Medical Center here. I mean, we are already outstanding. If you haven't heard of MD Anderson or Methodist, so we're already on the cutting edge of it. I don't know that this is one of those things you can support it or you can not support it. I don't know that I like funds being codified inside the Constitution. I think it becomes up to you and what you want to do with this. Personally, when I vote like I don't want to empower the government things that are going to cost me more money. And when I put them inside the Constitution, I don't ever want us to have to fund this and not fund something else because our budget isn't balanced. You don't have crystal ball into the future. I do think that this is a very personal issue. So if you want to make a choice on that lines, do so. Um, and again, I lost my dad to this, so I'm really kind of a little bit on the personal side to do it. But I'm also looking at it from my business owner side that says, I don't know if I like the idea of putting something inside the Texas Constitution that's a $3 billion expense every year that's now in the Constitution that must be fulfilled. So I think I am going to probably vote against this just because of the $3 billion price tag. It would be nice if it didn't have a dollar amount assigned to it and we did something a little different. Okay, next one. This is just because we really have to do this, we shouldn't have to do this. It's the craziest thing that this is going to come out of my mouth. So this is Proposition 15. This is a constitutional amendment affirming that parents have the right to make a decision for their children. Okay. I don't know why I have to have a constitutional amendment for that. But then I think that there's this idea that out there that now this is echo chamber material a little bit, all right? So I think some of this is it how much is this really happening and how much of it's not? So I'm going to throw that out there that way. I don't know that we need a document that prohibits the school and the federal government of they shouldn't be involved in the first place. And the fact that I have to make it in the Constitution that parents can't be stripped of their parental rights, it's a sad statement on where we are as a country and as a state. That those children are your children. They're always your children, first and foremost. They don't belong to the state. That is what Fidel Castro does. Okay, and I'm throwing him out because we had the whole little Ilian Gonzalez kid, and he said that kid belonged to him and didn't belong to the mother, and the mother all an old story. I know, but it's a good example. The question is, how much intervention into your child's life do you think the state should have? And that goes for medical decisions, that might go for educational decisions. I just don't think that the state or the federal government should be able to strip their parental rights from somebody. I just don't even, this is a choice thing. It's just appalling to me that we even have to have this in the first place. So for or against, it's unnecessary because of course the kid belongs to you. But I think we live in this time where people are fearful that somebody's going to come in and tell them what they can and can't, or usurp the parental authority. Um, you know, if you want to send your kid to school with lime green socks, that's your prerogative as a parent, and your kid might get picked on, but it's your prerogative. So do with it what you will. I personally think, although it's sad that we have to say it, why not say it? It's probably a good thing that we have to affirm in this state that the primary decision maker for your child is you. So that's that one. All right, the next one is constitutional amendment clarifying that a voter must be the citizen of the United States. Now, we could have a whole big discussion about this. All right. This is a topic all in itself. So, first of all, I'm going to tell you about me because I don't want anybody in the comments going anti-immigration. I am a naturalized American citizen. I came to the United States in 1968. I was born in Sicily. I was adopted by an American couple before there was laws that said, hey, adoption, immediate citizenship. So I did a whole host of things. For years, I sat down in the immigration office in Paterson, New Jersey, to get my green card every January when you had to renew it every January. My dad and I would go, and I remember sitting in this cold building on a hard chair for many hours while we waited for this. Um, so I am not a person that is insensitive to somebody that is or isn't a citizen. Okay, so I just don't even want to open that can of worms. We did it legally. My parents spent a lot of time, a lot of brain cells, and a lot of money to get me here. And I had to pass a citizenship at the age of 7. And my mother, God bless her, she made sure I was able to do it. So I remember getting my citizenship in a courthouse in Morristown back in 1974. So it's a long time ago. Rules are a lot different than they are now. There's a lot of issues back and forth with all of this. But here's the one thing that I do know. Okay. I love this country. I think I have maybe at times a greater love and appreciation for this country because you guys let me come here and be part of it. Um, I think I believe in the Constitution only second to the Bible. And in there, it says you have to be a citizen to vote. You can't be just anybody, Joe Blow, off the side of the road coming and voting. And if I liken it to our neighborhoods, I wouldn't want somebody coming from, across Houston to come and vote and tell me what I should do in my little Elm Grove neighborhood that I'm on the board with. I mean, you have to be a member of the community to vote in that election. You just can't randomly start voting just because. Um, I think it's good to clarify that you have to be a citizen in the United States. And the part of the problem is, um, other cities are allowing non-citizens to vote. New York allows them to vote in their elections, so you don't have to be a citizen to vote in a New York election. Um, driver's licenses have been given out for better or for worse by some of these. You have to be a citizen of Texas to vote in a Texas election. I don't know that I think that is unreasonable. Um, And so I support this. Actually, I support this one by a lot. Um, because if it's funny because I see a lot of the logic that is flawed out there. We're going to allow people that are not citizens to participate in a process. But if I go down to my local neighborhood, we have membership based on, you know, how many houses are in the neighborhood, where do you pay for, and you vote as that neighborhood. So in almost all aspects of our life, you are dealing with a group of people. At my church, if I'm going to have a vote at my church, you should be a member of the church to have a vote at the church. Hospital board, you can't just walk in and say, "Hey, I don't work here. I have nothing to do with this hospital, but by gosh, I'm going to vote on what happens at your hospital." When I bring it down to a very hyper local level or these simplified examples, it's not hard to extrapolate that out. I don't think to a bigger or wider audience. So although I'm spending a lot of time explaining that a constitutional amendment that only United States citizens can vote in Texas, uh, again, just like your kids, it almost seems counterproductive that we have to do this. But we've seen cities and across the United States doing it. Like I said, New York has it. I grew up in New York. I think if you live in the five boroughs, you should have a vote. If you're not a citizen of the five boroughs, you're not a legal citizen of the country, you're not here. I don't even think green card holders should vote. I mean, because you're in a process to do this. Why wouldn't you do that either? So I think you should have to be a citizen, a legal citizen of the place that you're trying to vote for. And a permanent resident, although it's a legalized status, you're still not a citizen, you're a citizen of another country. And then the question becomes, should you have a process in this country? So maybe this is its own podcast all on its own. I mean, I could probably talk on this for hours all by itself. But anyway, the moral of the story is when you go to vote Proposition 16, you probably should vote and say, hey, you have to be a citizen to vote. Okay, last but not least, constitutional amendment authorizing the legislature to provide an exemption for taxation for the market value of real property located in the county that borders the United States, United Mexican states that arises from the installation construction of border security. This is not a tax exemption, although it says it is, but it exempts added border security infrastructure from the appraisal. So if you come and you put cameras on my property line, I'm not responsible for paying taxes because you may have increased the value of my property. So that kind of makes sense to me. So I would say, yes, let's go ahead and support that one as well. So I'm going to put this underneath that you can kind of take it with you. I'll make a little chart of yes, no, that you can print and take with you to the polling places. Again, early voting is from now until Halloween, and then election day is November 4th. These elections where there is not a big ticket person on the ticket tend to have low turnout. But there's some important things that are in here that you probably need to go get out and go vote for. And what I will say is that in this Houston City Council race with 13 people running, Kingwood does have a say as to who gets that seat. I think, as I say this, the city of Houston is going to start to rethink their decision on whether they should make Kingwood part of Houston or not. Because just as Mayor Whitmire likes to tell everybody that we helped him beat Sheila Jackson Lee, we have the ability to set who that next congressperson is, or excuse me, city council person is. And really part of CD18 is in our Lake Houston area as well. So get out and vote, make good decisions, and pick good people. It's really important. And I think we really need to start down that road. So I hope that I have given you some food for thought here on how to do all this and where to go. Again, trying to get outside the echo chamber. I think I said I'm trying to come up with a tagline for this. Again, executive producer said need a tagline. Um, my opinion is I really think that's what this is going to become is how do you get everybody outside the echo chamber? There's two sides to everything. And there's two sides to everything, and the truth is in the middle somewhere. So you have to have all the facts to make a decision. You can't be so much into what your viewpoint that you don't really understand what the other side, because it makes it easy to manipulate. Um, and I see memes going on about this No Kings thing that went on this weekend. There's buses in our parking lot of people that were bussed into town. What I would have wanted to do, although I don't know that I felt like I would have loved to have run through that crowd with a microphone, asking if they knew why they were here. The other weird thing that I saw is everybody rolled up the sidewalks at the same time and punched out. So, or it looked like they punched out. I don't know if they really did. So I know we had real people in our city that went out to it, and that's your prerogative. I had people cleaning medians, I had people protesting. We got all kinds of things going on. But what I don't like is trying to bus somebody into an area just to make it look like it's a larger number than what it would have been without it. And the buses, for those inside of Kingwood, the buses were in the old Randall's parking lot, just so you know where they were, if you didn't see them. Anyway, so with that said, everybody have a great week. I'm sure something will come up in the next couple days and I'll be back with you. But please go vote. It is really important. Oh, one thing on early voting before I cut off for the day. Um, Early voting, whether you agree with it or not, I think everybody should be kind of participating in the early voting situation because it helps candidates and areas know where they have to get out the vote and make sure that they're spending money in the right places. Um, they know how many people vote each day. They don't know who you voted for, but they know that you went out and voted. They kind of keep track of that, and it helps everybody understand what they need to do. It is something that I think the folks on the left have done for a really long time, and I think it's something the folks on the right need to take a lesson on and get yourselves out and go to early voting so that people know, hey, this many people voted, this much of our section is. So everybody's on an equal playing field. Um, if you're not going to go back with election day, then everybody needs to go to early voting. There should be very little voting on election day at this point. And you see how that worked with Trump, that he told everybody, get out, vote, everybody go vote. It's because it allowed everybody to put resources in the right spot at the right time. So, and it's something the left has been doing. So it's not like I'm saying, hey, go do this. Both sides are doing it. So both sides should do it, but it requires us to go participate in that process. Anyway, have a good rest of your day, and I will see you all soon.